Hey, I'm not muted. We are transitioning. Look at that cool transition. Quieting the music and making Roz audible. Ayo, ayo, ayo. Not quite yet. And ayo, now my headphones are on and now people can hear Roz.
Yay!
One moment, please, as I just got a handy dandy message on my Facebook Messenger. Let me check. Nope, it is not relevant to what's going on right now. So let me just spotlight myself real quick. And yeah, then we're gonna start. That's so weird. Why is it not? Oh, probably because I was in gallery view. I am not seeing. What the hell is happening? There's no like spotlight myself thing. Where the hell is that?
The robots are taking over.
I'll just pin myself. It's basically the same thing. Okay, well, hello and welcome to episode 18 of Laughing into the Void. I'm your host, Tom, and co-hosting with me tonight, as always, is the lovely Rosalind Paris. You
Hi!
can watch... Actually, since you are the lovely Rosalind Paris... Oh, there's our guest. Awesome.
Yay!
Panic! Is what I was doing before.
You were panicking?
I was panicking. I don't know why. But you can watch our previous broadcasts on the District Comedy YouTube and Facebook channels or listen to them on most podcast platforms. Additionally, if you enjoy the stream, please consider making a donation of any size at district-comedy.live or like, share, and subscribe to our stuff. Here with us today, we have Vickie Plummer. Vickie Plummer has always been a late bloomer in life, from not getting her driver's license until she was 21 years old to not hitting her growth spurt until after graduating high school. So why would her stand-up comedy career be any different? She does have her BA in musical theater and did tour across the country with a few different companies, and she did pursue stand-up comedy in New York City, starting in 2000 until 2007, hitting all the clubs, bars, restaurants, writing, doing mics, all of that. But she decided to take a short break, which ended up being a 12-year hiatus. We're going to dig more into that later. And coming back to the comedy world in January 2019 meant starting all over from scratch. How fun! But Vickie is a fighter and has battled her way back from cancer and other life-threatening medical issues, and uses humor to poke fun at all the weird and crazy things that have shaped her life. So this was one more challenge that she accepted. So that all being said, thank you so much for being with us today. Switch to gallery view. Here we go. Let's jump right in. I feel like...
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for the very holiday-appropriate background.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. I'm
that
glad
totally
you like
makes
it.
up for not wearing green, so I will have to virtually pinch you.
Well, you have no green on. I see blue.
Hey, mutual pinching. Still pinching.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh my God.
And I have a Christmas mug. You can't see it because that has, I have a virtual background, but I have a Christmas mug that says "Crushing It," and it has a little, nutcracker on it. So, I'm just doing well today.
I was about to say, if you have a mug that says "Crushing It," that really applies to any time of year, not just Christmas. Hopefully.
But it's a little nutcracker. So.
No, that makes sense. Okay. Well, we're just going to jump right in because we ask the same question first and last of all the comics on this show.
Okay.
So
I would like to interrupt Tom. I'm sorry. I interrupt Tom constantly. It's one of our trademarks on this show, and I always feel bad. I'm sorry, Tom. I would like to make it perfectly clear to you and any future guests, it is okay to swear on this program.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
People always ask us this. Apparently, Tom and I are clean people,
we at least give off that vibe, because everybody who's been on this show, almost everybody is like, "Am I allowed to curse? Am I allowed?"
Yeah.
You are. We're very dirty people. Every time I upload the podcast, I mark the little box that says, "This is explicit." So yeah.
All right.
Curse away.
Good to know. Good to know. I don't swear on stage, which is really funny. But if you were at my house like a fly on the wall, I am like a truck driver. And I read an article though that people who swear are actually like the most honest people in the world. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I've heard honest, and I've also heard probably from a different article, more intelligent. That's like one of the things. It's like if you curse, you're supposedly like more intelligent.
I'll take it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not like, if you're gonna compliment me like that, I'm not going to investigate the research. Like, I'm just gonna take it. I don't have a lot going for me right now, so I'm just gonna take it.
All right, back to the question that I interrupted so rudely.
No. That's good to clarify. I should probably add that to the general like intro of this show to also like warn audience members. There's probably gonna be cursing, but yeah. So we ask everybody first up is, how would you describe your sense of humor to someone who has never seen you perform?
Oh, I'm a total goofball. Mm-hmm. I'm really goofy. I'm not like witty with the words. I don't do puns. Yeah, I'm just goofy. I'm one of those like silly types, you know. I love laughing. I love my favorite thing in the world, honestly. One of my best friends, her name's Heather Jones. She lives now across the country. But we used to work together. We would get to the point sometimes where we would be laughing so hard, we couldn't remember what started us laughing. And it would be like the tears streaming down your face kind of laughing. And like you'd start to like say something and you couldn't, and then you just start laughing again. That's the kind of laughing that I absolutely love. Like your stomach would hurt and all that kind of stuff. And it's just goofy, silly kind of stuff. That's kind of what my humor is like. Like I'll just tell silly stories. I tell a lot of jokes about when I was growing up and when I was a kid. And I try to relate to the audience with like having an older brother, having a younger sister, growing up the middle kid from a small town. And everybody can relate to having like dumb things you did as a kid, that kind of stuff. And like looking back and being like, I did that, you know, and just dumb, silly kind of humor. Yeah. Awesome. So I'm not intelligent humor. And my father's the opposite. He did lots of puns and, you know, and I was always like, okay, you know, whereas I'm always like, let's talk about farting, you know. So
farting is pretty universally funny. Like,
yeah, I'm a big fan of farts.
I remember there's like those belly laughs, like tears down your face kind of moments. Our friend Charlie calls it silly o'clock. And one time we had Tom and I came up through an improv troupe together. And Tom, I think you were there, right?
I was about to, like, you took me a little bit down memory lane for a second. Do you mean Charlie Henry?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a throwback.
Yeah.
Good times.
But so we did this horrible show for a convention of bus drivers, like school bus drivers. And it was really bad. And we all went back in the green room and Charlie was doing nothing but making fart noises with literally every part of his body for the next 3 hours. And we were all just dying.
Yeah. I just think like you can find humor in so many things and nothing is off limits, you know what I mean? Like, and I think silly humor is some of the funniest stuff. Monty Python is hilarious to me. The Ministry of Silly Walks and like dumb voices and silly faces. And I have friends that call me rubber face because I make silly, crazy faces. And I think it's so fun though, you know what I mean? And I think you can make anybody laugh by doing dumb stuff, and that's how you get through life, you know.
Absolutely.
That's fun. I think that's really fun. So
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned like the whole like getting through life thing, because I think that's like one of my first thoughts was the last time that I've had like one of those like laugh so hard like tear jerk moments. Not the last time, but the majority of those moments for me probably happened last when I was like in college, because it was still more of that like very like, I don't know, that's just a period in your life where you don't necessarily have to worry about the real world yet, but you get like all the benefits of being an adult, and it's just like it gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of like getting to meet new people, make new friends, have all that silliness. But I'm also glad that you mentioned your sense of humor, mostly because it was in the question, but also because I remember when you were on Too Funny Feedback, one of the main things that I was thinking when thinking about your sense of humor was that it does fall a little bit more in the like it's definitely super hilarious. Everybody should check out Vickie.
Thank you.
And it feels really cool because it's very much closer to the storytelling side of the spectrum.
Yes, definitely.
So I'm kind of skipping around my prepped questions here, which I shouldn't even have mentioned because I forgot to share them with anybody. So like, seeing that I was correct and you identify as like a storyteller comic, what is your writing process like? And is it kind of like, is it a conscious choice to make sure that your comedy goes more towards the storytelling format, or would you ever like consider doing like one-liner after one-liner if it got your point across? Because you also have a good message generally, I have found, when you kind of look at your comedy routine.
Yeah, it's really funny. So when I first started, God, way when I was like way younger, I first took a class, and my training, I actually have my degree is in musical theater. And so my training is in theaters. And I had done theater since I was 5. And my mom had put us in a musical program when we were 5 years old in the summer. It was called summer theater. I mean, how original is that? And it was like the one thing I absolutely loved to do because we got to pretend and we got to do shows and put on makeup and wear costumes. And it was really, really fun. And I was always the kid at home who was like, stop being so loud. You can't, use your inside voice. Stop running. Eat your cereal. Stop dancing around. And it used to just drive me crazy because I couldn't be myself. And my dad's a minister, and we were the kids that had to be perfect and had to be quiet and had to dress the right way and, fix your hair. Stop doing that. Stop fidgeting in your seat. And that used to drive me nuts because I felt like I couldn't express myself. So then when we could be in theater, I could be like this, crazy kid. I'm telling you like way more to get to the part of telling,
You're good. So, we have a full
that's why we're here.
Yeah. So there was no like way to take a stand-up comedy route, when I was a little kid. I just remember loving comedy because that brought everybody together. My family would laugh their heads off at the Carol Burnett show, and everybody thought that was so funny. And Saturday Night Live was a new thing, and so everybody would laugh at that too. And I was like, what is this? How is everybody laughing at all this stuff? And so I would imitate what I saw on TV. So Tim Conway would be this like old man who could like barely walk across the floor, and I would imitate him. And so Carol Burnett, here's this woman who was so funny and could make these faces and do these voices. And every week she did something completely different. And I was like, I like this lady. So she was my idol. I absolutely loved her. And she came from nothing and put herself through college and didn't even have a closet. Her closet was her shower rod. And I had her book, and I read her book all the time. And I was like, I love this lady. So she was my idol. She was actually my senior thesis in college. So when I graduated from college, I was like, I want to go to New York. I want to do stand-up comedy. And I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know, how do you start stand-up comedy? So I became a nanny. And I was a nanny in Connecticut.
I was like, that's the next best
that's
thing.
The road. That's the road to stand-up comedy. Just
I was a nanny in Connecticut because I could live there, and then they were close to the train. And I thought, okay, well, when I'm done being a nanny, then I can take the train into the city. Well, it didn't quite work out like that. I did some community theater in this town in Connecticut. And so that was kind of fun. But then I would go into the city on the weekends, but I still wasn't sure, like, well, how do you do stand-up? Where do you go? What do you do? So it wasn't until 2000, and I saw an ad in the Backstage paper that said stand-up comedy classes. And I was like, what? You can take a class? So I signed up at the New York Comedy Club. And when I got there, I got lost on my way because I'm horrible with directions. This was before smartphones. Mm-hmm. I got totally lost. It was on East 24th Street. I went on West 24th Street. I ended up near a strip club. I was like, this is not it. You know, I was like,
just get up by the pole and start doing a set.
Right? I don't know where I'm, and I finally got there and I got inside and literally the guy teaching was like, and that's what we're going to learn today. And I was like, oh shit, I just missed it all, you know? And so what he wanted us to do was literally get up and stand at the microphone. He was just going to have us talk for 2 minutes, just tell about our day, who we were, don't prepare anything, don't try to be funny. Just give our name, where we were from, what our day was like. And that was it. And he wanted us to just record it. We all had to bring a little, I still have it, our little recorder that we were supposed to bring. That was like a cassette recorder. And that was going to be what we were going to start to write jokes about. And I literally was like, I'm Vickie. I got lost. I ended up at a strip club. I have a terrible sense of direction. Blah, 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 blah. And some of my first jokes came from that. I literally wrote my first jokes about how I get lost all the time. I ended up at a strip club. So I went in, I took my shirt off. I made about $50 for putting my shirt back on, you know, and it's one of my very first jokes that I wrote. So I learned about how you tell the truth and you just add a little twist to it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't learn about my style of writing until years in. Like I learned about setup, punchlines. You know, I learned about the technical writing, like how you write a joke. But I didn't learn my rhythm and cadence and what I like to talk about until 5 years in. And I didn't, you know, so I was trying out stuff and I was trying to figure out who I was on stage and my voice and all that kind of stuff. A good 5 years in, I still was like, here's a joke, here's a random joke. This, you know, I wasn't putting myself in all the jokes. I wasn't, you know, my feelings about the jokes wasn't always in there. I was trying to put in what I thought the audience would like and what I thought the topics they would want to talk about would be important. You know, I was still trying to do that thing about like, oh, if I talk about sex, they're going to laugh, you know, all the things that comics do when they first start, you know, all the things like if I talk about partying, they're going to want to hear what I say, you know, and so I did all that kind of stuff.
Well, how did that work for you? Because I, at least again, from our improv background, the making shallow sex jokes, like, sometimes does work. Like, that will often get a reaction from the audience.
Yeah, of course. I got laughs, and I got a lot of, you know, it was funny because I got a lot of response, and I got a lot of comedians and bookers who were like, you're very talented. You're good at what you do. You have to talk about you. I need you to connect to you. I need to hear the real you. I got a lot of that when I first started. So it wasn't until 5-6 years in that I started to really be like, I want to talk about more important things, but I wasn't ready either. I wasn't quite ready to delve into what I really wanted to talk about. I felt like it wasn't quite the time. You know what I mean? Here in New York, it's very male heavy, you know, and now that the Me Too movement has happened, it's a lot better. But at the time, that was 2006, 2007, it was different.
Yeah.
Very different. Plus, at the time, I was a lot heavier. I've lost a lot of weight since then. And I also didn't have a lot of confidence. I felt very, I didn't feel pretty. I didn't feel, I don't know. I just didn't feel like I could talk about what I wanted to talk about. So I just felt like I had to talk about topics that were safe You know what I mean? So I was like, I'm not going to talk about my body. I'm going to talk about my body in ways that the audience will laugh. So I will talk about like, let me move this microphone out of the way so you can see me, you know, and get the cheap laugh, because I knew they'd laugh about that kind of thing. So
it wasn't necessarily like, or you tell me, was it that like you felt that they wouldn't laugh for that reason because of like your weight, or do you feel like it was that you were like, I guess the weight kind of like fed into the confidence sort of thing?
It was a little of both. It was, I didn't have the confidence. I felt like I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the writing skill that I have now. And I didn't have like the personal confidence either. Like I had more confidence on stage than I did in my personal life. You know what I mean? And so that helped. I had to have that. And then, you know, I've been through so much crap in the last 12, 13 years personally. You know, like I mentioned it in my bio, like I did have cancer. I did have, I almost died a few times in 2013. I went through like this big medical thing so I got diagnosed with cancer. I had a DVT blood clot 3 weeks later. Then survived those two things. Went into the hospital and had surgery to remove my thyroid and get all that taken care of.
Oh my God.
Your body's kind of an asshole.
Yeah, I know, right?
Or a trooper, depending on how you look at it.
Pretty crazy. And then 3 weeks later, I still had the little sutures on, and had to go back into the hospital with an infected gallbladder, and they couldn't take it out. I was so sick, they couldn't take it out. So I was in the hospital for 8 days. I'd have a little emergency procedure where they put a tube in, and that acted as with a bag, and I had to wear that for 3 months, and that acted as my gallbladder, and I had to like drain that. Oh, that was lovely. So then back into the hospital to have my gallbladder removed, which was supposed to be like a 1-day thing. And my doctor was like, my sister was there, and she was like, did she die? Like, because no one came to come out to tell her what was happening. And I was in there for 8 hours. And he came out and was like, I've never seen someone this sick. I don't know how she was walking around. And apparently I have a really high pain threshold and was in pain for years, but I thought that's how everybody felt. I thought
that's adulthood.
Yeah, I just thought that's how you felt. I didn't know. So I had to get that taken out, and I was in the hospital another 4 days. And then at the end of that year, so it took me a good month and a half to recover from that, I got the shingles. So
woman.
No, I know. So that was just 1 year, you know, but and then there were a bunch of other things that happened during that time. But just from that 1 year, that helped me with my comedy. And I know that sounds really stupid, but that helped me so much in like being grateful and being like so happy to still be here. And like it really helped me to go back, because I had been wanting to go back, but I felt like I'm too old to go back. It's too late to go back. I had my chance, and now I have a real job and blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't happy in that job, and I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. And I kept finding little scraps of jokes I had started all around my apartment. And everybody at my corporate job, I would have to lead these meetings, and it was a really cool job in the Broadway world. And it was education programs with Broadway performers and kids from around the world and stuff. So they would come in, and I'd have to like lead these workshops and bring the Broadway performers in. So I had to introduce them and all that. And I was always joking and doing introductions and everything. And they were always like, why aren't you on stage doing this? And blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, I used to do that. I in my old life, I used to do that. And finally, my coworkers are like, when are you going to go back? Can you just do like a new talent night or something? Like, just do that bit you did about, you know, last week when you were talking about this and that. And I finally was like, all right, I'll just go back once. So I literally was going to go back.
Fine, I won't dance. Don't ask me. Yeah.
And I went.
No, I think that's such a powerful thing too. Like,
yeah.
You know, I wish like because like when we started with free range improv, and we in free range improv we had like people a variety of ages. Like Tom and I were used to performing with people in our 20s because we were both in our early 20s.
Yeah, like our first improv troupe was like through the community college,
so it was all really young people. But free range had like, we had a member who I'm guessing was in her 60s, a member in her 50s.
If she wasn't then, she is now.
Yeah, exactly. She's a hot
improv troupe was like, it lasted for like 7 to 8 years, so that's fair to say for anybody.
Yeah.
Like if you were worried they were on the border, like by the end of it, they were definitely whatever age you thought they were in the beginning.
But yeah, like I mean, and for me as a like 20-something person fresh out of college, I was like, wait, so you don't have to give up your dreams when you grow up? Like, there's a way to have money but also have like a fulfilling creative life. Like, I feel like that's something there should be when you get your college diploma or your high school diploma, or you leave high school as a delinquent, whatever. I feel like there needs to be somebody in like an alley that's just like, hey, by the way, there's a way to make things work for you.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. So okay, so your coworkers got you back into performing basically because you
they kept at me. They were like, just go. And so when I did the show, I called a friend who still performed all the time, and she had kept reaching out to me. She's like, can you just do this like comedy night? It's a charity. Just come back and do it. It'll be fun, you know. And I always turned her down. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm out of practice. It's been 10 years. I'm not going to do that. Blah blah. And finally, I was like, all right, let me just do one night. And all my coworkers came to the show, and I can't even describe the feeling of like once I had that mic in my hand again, I was just like, what have I not been doing this? Why? And it was like the most incredible feeling. And to like, I was scared shitless. I was scared. I'm not going to lie. But the second that mic was in my hand and, I could feel like the pulse pounding in my ears, and they said my name and I was like, but once that mic was in my hand and the first joke was out of my mouth and I heard the laughter, I can't even describe the rush that was in me. And I was just like, oh my God, I've missed this so much. And it was just awesome. I still have that video. It's on my YouTube. And it wasn't the best performance. It wasn't like, it's not great at all, actually. But for me, it was like the coolest feeling just to like be back on that stage and just to know all of the crap that I'd been through to get there was really awesome. And when I got to the office the next day, all of my coworkers were like, you have to keep doing that. We didn't know that you could do that. We know that you could make us laugh, but we didn't know you could do that. And so that was really a really cool feeling.
Yeah, so, it's really good to have like the support of your community to like do something very vulnerable like stand up. I'm trying to imagine as a librarian, like having people come see my stand up. It's a very specific type of culture. I don't know if that would fly so much.
Well, this is Broadway, so that was different. Yeah. Everybody that worked there used to be a performer or was still a performer, trying to be a performer. Yeah, so it's a different culture for sure. They weren't librarians, that's for sure.
Just like going back to what you said about like your year of brutal illness and your body being the biggest
bitch to me, right?
There you go. Yeah. But like, yeah, so I've talked about it a couple times, I think, but when I worked at like in my past life, I worked as a advocate for survivors of domestic violence here in Baltimore, which is a heavy fucking job.
Yeah.
But the one thing that like got us through it was like making horrible jokes. Like,
yes.
I would go home and like try to tell my friends or my partner or my family a joke from work that I thought was hilarious, and they would just stare at me like,
I bet.
And I was like, no, I don't understand.
Also, so, like, I have to like joke about it because that's my way of like coping with it so that I can like better serve these people the next day.
Totally.
Did you find that with your comedy when you were going through all these struggles that it was I don't know, were you like writing jokes throughout? Because I know a lot of people use their comedy as a way to kind of process whatever they're dealing with in their life.
Well, I didn't physically write down any jokes while I was going through this, but I did find myself
this would be a good bit.
No, but I did find myself like comforting the doctors, which I thought was really funny. Like, and I would tell I had two friends who were with me the whole time. So my good friend Steve, who I went to college with, and then my good friend Heather. She and Steve were the ones who were always at the hospital, going to the doctor's appointments. So they knew all my doctors. I had a team of doctors because once I got diagnosed with the DVT, which ended up being a blood clotting disorder called factor V Leiden, which I didn't know I had. And so now I wear this cute little bracelet that says, factor V Leiden, I'm on Eliquis for the rest of my life, so that the doctors, if I'm ever in like a car accident or something, they'll know, oh, she's on a blood thinner, and they'll know something is wrong. But they went to all my doctor's appointments so they would know. And because there was so much information coming at me, I can't remember all that stuff. So they would record on their phone or write things down, and they would know what was happening. But they would comment. They're like, why are you comforting the doctors or making jokes? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess that's how I'm dealing with it. So like the day of surgery, I had my regular cancer doctor. I had I can't remember what they're called, the vein doctor, Dr. Jean.
No, never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
And then there were all these nurses and all these, it was a teaching hospital. And then there were all of these like other, I want to say there were like 15 or 20 people in the operating room. And they let you walk from, the area where you have your family. You have to have, your medical gown, and they answer all your questions, everything. And you walk down the hallway into the operating room. It's the brightest room you've ever been in, more than any spotlights you've ever had. It is the brightest room. Mm-hmm. And I walked in, and there's literally like 20 people in there. And I was like, all right, let's get this party started, you guys. Let's go. And they all just started laughing. And I was like, all right, where do you want me? What do you want? And so they laughed at me. So we all just cracked up. And then when I was in the hospital, 3 weeks later with the infected gallbladder, there was one night that I found out later that I almost died. Didn't know at the time that was what was going on. I just knew that I did not feel well, and I was having these horrible, horrible nightmares. And on my IV were like 20 bags. And I have a picture of it because I remember being like so drugged out. I was like, what is all this stuff? And it was like all these IVs of drugs. And there was this really nice nurse. He was this Jamaican nurse, and he kept coming in and putting a washcloth on my head. And he was holding my hand at one point. And he said, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. I do remember that. So I guess during that night, I lost consciousness and was in and out of consciousness. All I know is I was having these horrible nightmares, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. I do remember that I was in this weird amusement park, and you had to go on these slides, and the way that you got tickets, which was like money, was people had to throw up on you. And it was the grossest.
Been there.
Yeah, it was like... And that's how you got these tickets, which were money. But it was like the gross dream. But anyway, wow. the next day, it was super early in the morning, and I was just laying in my bed, and I could hear the doctor out in the hallway, and he was talking to all the younger. I guess they're not officially doctors yet. They're the students,
like the ones in residency or whatever.
The interns or residents or whatever the fuck they're called. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was talking to them about patience. And so he was like, so she really took a turn for the worse last night. We have to try to figure out what we're going to do because we don't know how to help her. We can't operate. We're not quite sure, but it was really bad. So we'll check in on her. We'll see how things are going. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, that poor woman. I hope she's okay. This is just awful. That's so bad.
Not realizing they're talking about you.
And then they walked into my room and I was like, oh shit, they were talking about me. And for now, I think it is hilarious. I laugh so hard when I tell that to people, and they look at me and they're like, "Oh my God, that's
you
awful."
almost died." Yeah, I'm laughing right now because that's like normally my reaction, also to funny stuff, but more often than not, also like, "Oh my God, that's making me a little uncomfortable." Like, I'm so glad that you're on the other side of that.
But it's funny too, you know.
It's definitely funny
that
too.
I can tell this story and be like, "It's me they were talking about." And then they all came in, and I could see their faces because they're all learning to like not show the emotion. They have to like, but I could see some of them. So of course, I'm now trying to make them feel better. That here they are looking at the lady that almost died, and I'm like, "Hey guys, what's up? How you doing?" And so they're all looking at me and I was like, how's your day? How are you? And they did not know what to do. And I was just like, so
I'm on my deathbed.
Like,
hey.
Feeling? You know, and I was like, I don't feel great.
That is fantastic. Oh my God.
That day was like the worst day. That was when they did the weird needle in my stomach thing, and I had to have a blood transfusion. I had 2 blood transfusions that day because my blood was too thin. So that was like the scariest day, but I was so drugged out. But I do remember trying to make them feel better.
So how long did it take for you to go from that kind of period of your life to being in a place where you can kind of like talk about it in a funny way, in a comfortable way, in a performance setting? Because obviously it's like a completely different thing.
I want to say at least like 5 years. Because I mean, that year I couldn't talk about it in a funny way. I would cry. Like I cried. I had to get through the emotions. You know, I had to feel all that. I had to go to therapy for a little while to work out the emotions because there was so, like I said, there was so much that came at me, and I had to work out all that stuff because it's a lot of heavy stuff. You're like, I almost died. What? You know?
Yeah, it's like anybody would have their coping mechanisms put to the test at that point.
Yeah, and then you have to go through like, how, what? You know, you have to work out all that stuff, and then there's a lot of gosh, what would the words be? Like I had to figure out like, why am I going to work every day? That's not important. You know what I mean? I was like, family's important, experiences are important. Yes, I have to pay my bills, but there's so much more important than this, you know?
Like a layer of existentialism. Yeah. There we go. That's the word. Yeah.
My friends started calling me Matthew McConaughey because I kept saying to them, the world's going to keep turning. You know?
All right.
They were like, all right. They were like, thank you know, because I had such a change because I used to be a workaholic, and they were like, what happened? I was like, well, you know, the world keeps turning, you guys. Let's just leave at 6 o'clock. Time to leave. They're like, I'll just do one more thing. I'm like, work will still be here tomorrow. And they were like, okay, McConaughey, you know. So, yeah. I just had to work through a lot of crap. And then once I got through all of that, I give a lot to charity now. I did before, but now it's more. Now I really am like, you know, there's a lot more important things than money. There's a lot more important things than, you know, working 40 billion hours a week. Yeah, I work hard in that 40 hours a week, but then that's it.
Yeah.
I'm not.
That's the kind of attitude I try to have too. Is like, if I'm off the clock, I am off the clock.
Yeah.
Try and like, we gotta really create those boundaries, I feel, just to make it all worth it, really. Even if you love your job and even if you're doing important work, it's so much more important to, maybe not more important, but like to have that separation for yourself so that you can then go back and make sure you're giving your best self to the job. But
well, I was filling out I got laid off last year, and I was filling out an application. I guess that was on Monday, and halfway through the application, it was like, this job is more than 40 hours a week. It's 55 plus. Are you willing to? And I was like, delete.
No,
I'm not.
I'm not. Yeah.
No, I'm not. I was like, absolutely not. I don't give a shit. This is selling, appliance. No, I'm not. This is not important. If this was my business and it was something that I really believed in, yeah, maybe I'd probably put some more time into it. But no, I'm not. I don't give a crap about your company and putting in 55 hours. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
And I don't care what that company thinks, So I just didn't even finish filling it out. I was like, no, sorry.
That's awesome.
So I'm kind of curious, Tom, if I can ask a question that was not pre-prepared.
Hell yeah. Again, I didn't share my list of questions with fucking anybody. So, like, we're going, like,
more organized.
We're free balling it.
It's St. Patrick's Day. I guess that's our excuse. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
anyway, I'm curious, like, as somebody with a theater background, how do you think that influences your stand-up? Because I know a handful of people who do comedy that started out in theater, and I feel like that kind of has a very specific, like, je ne sais quoi when
very specific personality type.
Yeah, when it's translated into comedy. Do you feel like that's kind of informed your comedy at all?
Well, it's funny because I hear a lot of traditional stand-up comics. They think it's like a bad thing. They're like, that's not really stand-up comedy. And I think it's stupid, honestly. I'm like, really? That I already know how to use a microphone? That I already know where to find the light? That I already know, how to project my voice? That I already know how to do a character? Yeah. I personally think it's fine. I was never one of those theatery kind of people anyway. I'm very natural on stage. I'm sure Tom will already tell you, I did one of the mics and that was one of his comments right away. It's like, you're very natural with how you talk, I've never been one of those, like, I'm on stage and I'm playing a character and, you know what I mean? And I always call that, theatery. When somebody's on stage and you can see the character in their head, that they're like, okay, on the word the, I'm going to turn.
I am performing now. Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's the perfect way to explain it. Like, they see the character in their head. Like, yeah, I know. I like when you say that, I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's one of my pet peeves. It drives me crazy. And there are even famous people that are like that, especially on Broadway. When you see somebody famous, that they put them on Broadway and they're not a stage actor, and you see them doing the work, you see it happening. And I'm just like, oh, you need another 2 weeks in the rehearsal room so that can go away. You know what I mean? Because we shouldn't be
seeing They never give them a long enough rehearsal process.
Yeah, we shouldn't be seeing that process. That needs to be happening where we don't see that anymore. You know what I mean? And so I think the thing with people that have not had theater training that are stand-up comics, there's nothing wrong with that. And people that have theater training that are stand-up comics, there's nothing wrong with that either. You just have to put it into one thing. You know what I mean? And I've never understood the divide. I've never understood it when people are like, that's not true stand-up comedy. Really?
Yeah.
Just because I already have the training on how to walk onto a stage and how to take the mic out of the mic stand and move it out of the way. Okay. Whereas, Joe Schmo, who's never stood on a stage before, but calls himself a stand-up comic and stands there with the mic stand in front of him the whole time, blocking his face. Okay. I don't get it. I personally don't get it.
Not to get too analytical, but I kind of wonder, like, especially as someone who, like, I'm not a theater person, but I went to a very theater-oriented school for college. And I feel like there's this interpretation of theatricality as being like a feminine trait or a queer trait. And I'm using the air quotes so you can tell that I'm very serious.
If you're listening to the podcast, she's using air quotes.
I'm using air quotes. And I kind of wonder, because like you like touched on it before, like comedy is still in many ways it's better, but in many ways it's still kind of a boys' club. Like, you know, when I've had hang-ups in the past, a friend has always said to me, look, if these average ass white dudes can get on stage and just talk about smoking a bong all day,
like dick,
you know, and so I kind of wonder if like some of the stigma against like being theatrically trained is a little bit of that, like, oh, that's really, or oh, that's kind of queer, whatever, you know, like.
There's also like this, I feel like this sentiment that like everybody has to be like hard and edgy, which like in itself have kind of been like indoctrinated as masculine traits.
But also no one is more fucked up than theater people.
Yeah, like, that's also like what people need to realize is we hard as fuck.
Let's be real, as a friend of theater people, y'all some fucked up people.
You know, it's funny. It's true. It's true. I've been in you know, theater since I was a tiny kid, 5 years old, you know, and then when I got into college and all that kind of stuff, drugs, alcohol, all that crap ran rampant, you know, and people are messed up. A lot of people that should have been in therapy were not in therapy, you know, and
because we have theater instead. That's our thing.
Yeah.
But the same thing with comedy. It's the same thing. People, and I said this to somebody the other day, people confuse stand-up comedy with therapy, and they think like, I'm just going to work out all my problems by writing about it through comedy and do my therapy on stage. And it's not the same thing. You really need to go to a therapist and work out your demons with a therapist, and then write your comedy and do that on stage. And you're going to be much more successful in your personal life and your stand-up comedy if you work out your demons and with a therapist, a trained therapist, and do that than if you self-medicate and, you know, get drunk and
tell
high
jokes about it
stuff and tell jokes about it. Because then your audience is a hostage and you're doing that and you're hurting yourself as opposed to getting help.
And
you know
them a lot.
You know, and I agree with you in the respect that it's still a boys' club. It is still a fight. It is still like, you know, women aren't funny. I hear that all the fucking time. Women aren't funny. Really? Who says? Just because you have a penis, you are saying that women aren't funny? Okay.
Boomer.
Well, Christopher Hitchens said it, and he's dead now. So look how well that worked out for him.
Those are both facts.
Those are both facts.
Oh, God.
I've heard unfunny men and unfunny women and unfunny non-binary.
Yeah. Everybody can be not hilarious.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I've heard funny everyone. So it really depends. So it's all genders and non-genders are funny and not funny. It depends on your point of view. And, you know, comedy is subjective. They all need to remember that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'll also say that, like, as far as the parallels between stand-up and theater, those both read much more like cult settings than therapy settings to me.
For real.
Yeah.
For real. But I do remember as a kid loving stand-up comedy. Like Steve Martin was my favorite. I loved him. I thought he was so funny and creative and just silly. I think that's why my humor is so silly, because he used to have like the arrow through his head and he played a banjo and he had balloons and the rubber chicken and like he just did silly voices and was crazy. Yet then he could go on Saturday Night Live and play all these different crazy characters, you know, like the Crazy Brothers, and he would do all these voices and the King Tut song and like all this stuff. I would sneak down the stairs. I was 6, 7 years old. Sneak down the stairs and peek into the TV room and watch what I could watch. And, you know, I wasn't supposed to, but I thought that was so funny, you know?
I was reflecting on it a couple days ago, but I was like, one of my main like comedic influences growing up, I realized was Jim Carrey, which ended up being like so like right on the nose with like how I ended up developing as a performer. Because like, yeah, I like did the improv stuff, but like for the past 5 or 6 years now, I've been working with a physical theater company, and he's like a very physical like comedic actor, and I was just like, it was like a light bulb going off, like, oh my god, this is probably why. This is why like these two main things are together, is because I was like watching The Mask on repeat when I was like 7 years old. Yeah, I think it's so important to remember like what our influences are, especially like as a child, because I also think like children have such a great perspective when it comes to comedy, because comedy is so much about like truth, and children just like have this amazing ability where it's like they just call it how it is, and they're so great at identifying if something is being authentic or not.
Right. And they'll tell you right away if something is not funny, or if they're not telling the truth, or if, you know, they know right away. They can smell it. They'll be like, nope, I don't believe you.
I have one friend whose daughter is very forthright and will tell me unabashedly how not funny I am. It's great.
I love
it. Which is fine. You know, everyone needs a critic. It's like I'm getting my own feedback, Mike. Where I'm crying a lot.
Is that Lula that you're talking about, Tom?
I wasn't going to name her because she's a minor and didn't ask to be involved with this show.
I'm just saying, I once looked at her and I was like, oh my god, you're getting so big. And she's like, yeah, I'm 5 now.
Which is like, yeah, it's a big deal when you're 5. It's like, it's not like I'm 4 anymore. I've seen some stuff. But because we are winding down a little bit on time, this by no means has to be the last question, but I want to make sure we do get it in before the end. But I want to ask what we ask all of our comics. This is also like a good chance if you have anything that you'd like to plug, but we want to know what's up next for you, what's coming up immediately, so we can check you out and keep up with you. I'll plug your Instagram handle again at the outro of the show, but also if there's anything as far as like long-term goals, kind of like what your perspective is as far as like we've had some people on the show where it's like, I love comedy, it's a great hobby, and like other people who are like, I'm gonna be a comedian, I'm gonna write for SNL, or like that kind of stuff. So
okay, well, immediately I have 2 shows tonight. So I have I have a show at 10 o'clock that is Mary Kennedy's St. Patrick's Day show that is with Broadway Comedy Club / Comedy Therapy, which is on Zoom. And that's at 10 o'clock. And then at midnight, I have Dan Mills' show, which is working out comedy with professional comedians. And so I have a guest spot. And so it's like really awesome comedians that have been on David Letterman and Conan and Stephen Colbert. And so I have to, let me look and see who the guests, I've been promoting all these shows and I have to look and see, like, so I don't mess up who's on what show.
I gotta keep my calendar straight. That's
good.
I
routinely forget who's on this show. And
okay, so
I have a 2/3 chance of getting it right.
Carmen Lagala is one of the guests, and Danny Joles and Luke Severid. And so then I'm one of the guest spots. And then Dwayne White is one of the guest spots. And so that one's at midnight. And then I have like some other shows coming up that are like that. But ultimately, what I want to do, I want my own Netflix special. I want that. And then I want to be like that crazy next door neighbor lady that you see in movies.
Yeah.
That you're like, who's that wacky funny lady? That you don't necessarily know her name, but she's in like all the movies. You're like, that crazy funny lady. That's who I want to be. So
sort of like a Joan Cusack.
Yeah, like Joan Cusack, but more like I'm gonna have to look up her name.
But better.
Like older movies from like the 1940s and 50s. From You Can't Take It With You. She's an older woman. I'm gonna have to look up her name, but she was in all these older movies. But that kind of lady that you're just kind of like steals the show.
Yeah.
Not the star, but you're like, that's who you remember from the movie. That crazy, quirky. That's who I want to be.
I don't know why, but the image that's coming to my head was the next door neighbor on Bewitched.
Yes.
Do you remember that? Okay, great, awesome.
Mrs. Kravitz. Yes.
Oh, yeah, God. I'm glad you remembered the name because that was gonna bother me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be great. I'd cast you as that if I am producing a TV show. We'll see. That's gonna take at least another month.
At least another month. Yeah.
Right. But anything else you want to share with us before we closed out for the evening?
No, I'm just so happy that you asked me to be on this. This is a lot of fun.
It was so fun having you. I feel like we've only hit the tip of the iceberg, but it's also only an hour show. So unfortunately, I feel like if we try and dig into any of the other stuff, it'll like I would have to put an extra half hour on it just because I'd want to make sure that we like unpack it completely.
Well, I'm such a like blah blah blah. I can talk for hours.
No.
And hours and hours. So
no, that's a good quality. But we'll just have to look at some point maybe next season because I've had other people too who have like requested to come to be interviewed again.
Yeah. Oh, really?
So I don't know. I think maybe at some point it would be fun to have like a I don't know, some sort of All-Stars episode. Anyway, that's just me talking off the top of my head. That's nothing that's officially in the works, but I do want to give us a quick little outro. Allow me to pin myself. But yeah, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank you, Vickie, for being such a great guest and hanging out with us. You can follow her on Instagram at Vickie Plummer Comedian. That's correct for your Instagram handle, right?
That's correct. And my name is Vickie.
Yes, I-E, not with a Y.
Vickie crazy ways.
Yeah. And that's Plummer, Plummer. There's no B. She is not working on anybody's pipes. But thank you, Ross, for being a great co-host as always. And a big thanks to you, our audience, who's probably out there. We are really grateful if you're watching the program. And also, want to remind you that this Friday we're going to be doing a special show, Stand Up for a Cause, in benefit of the AIDS Committee of Toronto, also known as ACT. So be sure to check that out this Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be airing at bit.ly/districtcomedyACT. Don't worry, all the links to everything is in the description of this episode. Yeah. Tune in next week. We're going to be interviewing comedian Mike